Hey everyone, Jon M here, and I'm back with another video. Today I'm going to be reviewing the new film Wicked for Good. This is the follow-up film of the original Wicked film that came out last year, and this is the follow-up after the intermission of the Wicked story, Wicked for Good. The film goes as follows. Now demonized as the Wicked Witch of the West, Elphaba lives in exile in the forest, while Glinda resides at the palace in Emerald City, reveling in the perks of fame and popularity. As an angry mob rises against the Wicked Witch, she'll need to reunite with Glinda to transform herself and all of Oz for good. Again, this was a film that I was definitely looking forward to seeing how they're going to wrap things up, coming from the first film Wicked, which definitely was widely successful culturally, even for moviegoers going back into the cinema and making this film like an event, going all the musical and theater nerds and everything coming and celebrating this film in the pink and green, right? And it was very, as just as a movie lover, great to see people want to go back to the theater and and make it an event and celebrating the theater, because after this age post COVID, we're seeing people just waiting to go, not go see films, just waiting for it to come on streaming. But this film definitely is something you need to see in the theater, in cinema, in IMAX, in Dolby Cinema, particularly because there are some great visual scenes in this film that definitely continue from the amazing shots of the first Wicked, right? Leading this film, we have Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande, who plays Elphaba and Glinda. And I felt they did a really good job, again, continuing that beautiful cinematic synergy that they have from the first film. And after where they left off, after the iconic defying gravity moment, and now these two characters are living two different lives, one in all of the perks and glory, one in being shame and abandonment, while also being hunted down for based off of a lie from the wizard, right? And I felt that it was a very powerful moment, both of these characters coming in terms of accepting the choices that they make, and knowing, hey, I need to prove the wizard lies, and Glinda, who is basically trying to say, hey, let's just keep the peace, everything's okay, right? And I felt, unlike with Wicked, which definitely the center point of it is definitely Elphaba and Glinda, but really Elphaba's story. This, in the second one for Wicked for Good, you're seeing the transformation of Glinda. And I feel Ariana Grande definitely stood out in a very strong way, in terms of her character, going from a very selfish character to a selfless character, as we get to see her backstory, and see how she becomes who she is, and basically it's better to be loved and respected and revered than to actually be a good person and doing good. Again, if everybody likes you, then everything's fine, and we all know that's not the case. But definitely, I want to talk about Cynthia Erivo now in her coming to her own from the first film, where I feel like she definitely owned this. In this film, she definitely does not take a back seat at all. However, I do believe she's now came fully grasp of her character, say, no, I know who I am, I know I'm going to do, and I'm going to expose the wizard. And even though her friends and her family, pertaining to her sister, definitely are in difficult situations, whether they still care about her or they are angry at her for leaving, and they dive into those themes a lot here. But one thing I want to talk about, just from a cinematography perspective, there's a lot of beautiful shots here, especially mirror shots, how the camera is panning and as they're going through these musical numbers, and strategically using using the camera to also tell the story, not just with the actors and the performers singing and dancing, right? And they did that in a really good way of setting the atmosphere of the scene from an emotional level, and just kind of seeing where the characters by themselves and singing a song that's reflecting themselves and what they're feeling, and using the camera to show, and their environment to show what they're actually feeling. And definitely, even going from the first film where you have the musical moment of defying gravity, here you have no good deed, and Cynthia and Ariana Grande definitely leaves no crumbs left on the table. But with Cynthia, she definitely owned that scene visually, even just from a vocally standpoint that they do a good job of allowing her to own those scenes. But also want to talk about some of the supporting characters too. Jonathan Bailey played Prince Fiero. This film, you definitely get more expansion of the side characters and see who they eventually become and evolve to. The seeds that are planted in Wicked Part 1 definitely flourishes here in its fullest capacity. You're seeing even Ethan Slater plays Bach, Marissa, who plays Nessa, the sister, and you're seeing these characters now evolved. They are not the same characters from the first film, just because of the circumstance of what's going on with Oz and them trying to hunt down the Wicked Witch, Elphaba. And I really like how they kind of just show just the tension in these relationships and just the pure audacity of how far people will go for a lie. And even when someone is in position of power, how they're going to tell a lie for their own personal gain, right? When you're seeing these animals being persecuted and some of the animals are fleeing so they can be free, right? And the Wizard of Oz, Jeff Goldblum, he's basically is trying to manipulate this situation, along with also Michelle Yeoh's character, Madame Morrible, as they're just trying to create this narrative and manipulate Glinda into playing her part and everything like that. But I love how they create this atmosphere here, and but really for Ariana Grande to come to her own, as Glinda saying, enough is enough, as she's basically having coming to terms with her relationship with Elphaba and realizing that that she can't take this anymore, and especially for the sake of their relationship, and just also even her relation with Fiero, as well as we see a love connection between Elphaba and Fiero that does only cause a rift and create a lot of situations in this film and between Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo again. And I love just the fact that this film was perfectly cast, directed by Jon M, that he did a really good job in terms of the casting of all these characters. But the fact that this entire these two films rest on the shoulders of Cynthia and Ariana, they definitely embodied these characters. But I think this is also be a great story for women, for friendships, sisterhood, if you want to call it, but also even politically. And I know when I say that people are going to scratch their heads thinking that this is going to be a very political film, but in some of the themes of a higher government trying to manipulate set events to tell their version of history, and especially there was a moment with the wizard Jeff Goldblum of a dialogue talking about how we manipulate society, that the truth is not what's fact, what is what we all agree what is the truth, right? Just for the sake of keeping the peace, or or just for the sake of trying to hide the skeletons in our closet. And I think they did a good job here as the sins of the wizard gets revealed, especially if you know the story. I'm not going to spoil it for you, but there are some things that get revealed that were seeds that are planted in part 1 that they pay off here in a very dramatic way, but in a way that was also satisfying to wrap up the story. But I will say this too: they did a very good job of strategically placing certain characters from the Wizard of Oz in a way that doesn't distract you from the story, which is Elphaba and Glinda, right? We know the Cowardly Lion, we know the Scarecrow, we know the Tin Man, we know Dorothy, right? The Slippers, I'll get you my pretty and you little dog too, that, right? But if you know the musical of Wicked, they do exactly what they do of not drawing that much attention to Dorothy, because that's not the story. They focus again on Elphaba and Glinda, but yet she still exists, and yet she is in the story, and the plot that's moving along. She definitely is a plot device in this film, but it did a good job of even again the camera of seeing someone's different point of view of iconic scenes we know in film history of the Wizard of Oz, right? But I will forewarn you, do not watch Wizard of Oz and take that film as textbook to watch this film. If you know just the basic tropes and the characters and an actual story on a surface level, then go on with that. But there are different versions of certain characters you might know, especially going into the Tin Man. The full dramatic scenes of him being a person without a heart. What does that mean? He's heartless, right? The Cowardly Lion, who just scared of everything, right? But also Scarecrow doesn't have a brain, right? So this said character who is the Scarecrow, well, he might have his full memory until said event happens throughout this film. And again, it's smart with you, but again, the cues was always there. The Easter eggs was always there from the first film. But I will say I do prefer Wicked Part One than For Good. Not to say this was a bad film or a sloppy film, but again, this is what happens when you split a musical into two parts. Did it need to split in two parts? Some may agree, some may disagree. For me, I was perfectly fine that we got two films. Because I didn't waste no time in this. I didn't feel scenes were dragged on, and especially with the runtime of this movie being about 2 hours and 17 minutes or so. That they do definitely go hit those notes, and the pacing of this film definitely ramps up as we going through these events, and particularly within the second and third act. Because the first act is really just allowing us to breathe with these characters and to digest everything that has happened from the first film. But I do prefer Wicked Part One. Defying Gravity is the best musical moment out of each film. I do believe that to me the story was better in terms of Wicked Part One. But again, it's supposed to be a full story, Wicked and Wicked for Good as one singular story. But I'm glad that we were able to wrap up, and I felt satisfied. I felt this definitely wasn't a let down sequel, I should say. But I think they definitely did a good job in terms of creating this iconic musical and jumping into the cinema, and going to stand the test of time as one of the best musical adaptations in the cinema in history, right? I'm not gonna say is the best. Obviously, you got West Side Story, you got other films as well. There definitely will be a conversation, maybe top 5, top 10, best musicals of all time. But I will say, if you are a Wicked fan, you are going to enjoy this film. To go see this film in theaters when it comes out November 21st in a theater near you. I believe you guys are going to have a fantastic movie going experience. Definitely go in costume, go in outfits, the dresses, the dress as the Wicked Witch, everything, and bring in your pink and green and have a great time in cinema. And I believe you will when you go see this film in a theater near you. All right, guys, that concludes my review. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.